Okay, let's go. The year is 2006. The film is called Scoop. It's directed by Woody Allen, and Joe Strumble, played by Ian McShane. Now he's not in this film an awful lot, but he's in it very well when he is in it. Ian McShane plays Joe Strumble. He's a newspaper reporter, but unfortunately he dies. He basically dies more or less at the beginning of the film, and finds himself on the barge of death. Among others on the same barge of death is a young woman who is convinced that her employer, Peter Lyman, who's played by Hugh Jackman, has poisoned her, which is why she's dead and on the barge of death. And in fact, Lyman may even be the tarot card killer, as well as being an aristocrat. Now, the tarot card killer is a killer who's going around killing prostitutes at this present time in the film. Meanwhile, Sondra Pransky, who is played by Scarlett Johansson, is in London on holiday, and she's an American journalism student. Sid Waterman, played by Woody Allen, is a magician, also in London, performing as the Great Splendini. Sondra happens to catch one of his performances and is the volunteer for one of his magic tricks. She has to enter a booth, the dematerializer, while the Great Splendini performs the magic to, dematerialize her. Except that what happens instead is that she sees someone else in the box, Joe Strumble. Joe has escaped the Grim Reaper's barge of death for a while to relay his newly gathered information that Peter Lyman may well be the tarot card killer to any journalist that he can find, and it happens to be Sondra. Sondra obviously doesn't realise at first that Joe is a ghost. She explains to Sid, the Great Splendini, what happened in the dematerializer, but Sid is in a flap because he's only concerned in the usual sort of Woody Allen type of flap. Sid's in a flap that he's only concerned that she didn't materialize or dematerialize or do any of the things that she should have done to make the trick work, and doesn't really want to know what she saw or what she was told. But she persists. She ropes him in. Sandra begins to investigate Lyman in a roundabout way and ropes Sid in to help. She gains entry to Lyman's exclusive club and pretends to drown in the pool to catch his attention by making him rescue her. Now, she uses the persona Jade Spence, who, in her mind, is the daughter of a rich oil family in America, and Sid is her father. And Jade and Peter Lyman start to see each other as a result of him rescuing her, and Sondra is convinced that Lyman is the murderer, but Sid isn't so convinced. Meanwhile, Jade becomes very much closer to Peter. Sondra, as a journalism student, has had the habit of sleeping with her interviewees and then never getting to the actual quotable information. So it's a bit of a drawback there. And here she is doing exactly the same thing again as she falls for Lyman. At one point, Sondra finds a tarot deck under a French horn in Peter's climate-controlled vault full of valuable antique musical instruments. Sid pushes Sondra to write the news story, but it gets rejected by the news editor without any proof. Now, then the police arrest the tarot card killer, the actual tarot card killer. So Sondra owns up to Lyman that, well, she's not Jade, and Sid is not her father. But Peter wants to continue seeing Sondra, though. Joe Strumble, meanwhile, now contacts Sid and to suggest that Peter Lyman used the tarot card murders to obscure a murder that he actually did commit. And Sondra and Peter Lyman go for a short holiday in the country, leaving Sid to pursue this line of investigation. Sid finds that Lyman used to see a prostitute, Betty Gibson, who it turns out was killed by the tarot card killer. Sid breaks into Lyman's vault again, finding a key which fits Betty Gibson's flat. And meanwhile, Peter Lyman confesses to Sondra on a rowboat on a lake that he killed Gibson as she was blackmailing him, and he used the tarot card MO as a diversion. This is exactly what Joe Strumble had told Sid. Lyman now intends to drown Sondra, believing that she's a bad swimmer, because that's how he met her. He throws her into the lake, then calls the police to report the unfortunate drowning. Sid drives like crazy in one of those little smart cars to Lyman's country property to rescue Sondra, but unfortunately he crashes the car and dies. The police question Lyman, who explained that, well, she was not a very good swimmer, and then Sondra turns up at the door, dripping wet, soaking wet, but smiling, and she explained to the police that the initial drowning in the club's pool was just an act, and she's in fact a very good swimmer. The newspaper now accepts her scoop. The great Splendini is now on the barge of death doing card tricks to all the people on the barge of death to try and cheer them up. As I say, it's a very small-scale Woody Allen late film. 2006 scoop. I really